Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of Vaul, and in this video we're having a look at how we can get the best quality 3D scan of a small object. So this is what we're looking to scan, and this is a tricky object. It's not attached to anything, and as you can see it is pretty small, basically the size of the joint of my finger. And to scan this we're using the Mini 2 from Revopoint. I've picked this because, well, Revopoint's kind of my favourite scanning brand. I don't think there's a sub tens of thousands of pounds brand that does a better job than Revopoint, and their software is really top notch. And I picked the Mini 2 because, well, this is kind of what it's designed to do. That you could easily do it on the Morocco or the Metro X, but they're more expensive because they do more things besides just scanning small objects. So I'm going to start off by scanning this, well, wrong is probably the best way of putting it. I'm going to put no procedures in place to make this better and effectively cause an issue in what is user error. And then we'll have a look at what we can do to try and make this a vastly better scan. Now I'm not going to take this too far. We're going to go into a new project as we normally would, and I will set this up in a way that most people should be perfectly happy to do themselves. So we've got the object relatively centered. We're going to up the exposure. I'm not going to use auto. Auto is fairly fine, but I actually prefer to do this manually myself. And then we'll just center the object so it's about the right place for our scanner to be able to view it well when it does its rotating. Next, on the right hand side, we can see we're in the sort of good to fair range for distance, so I'm going to move the scanner a bit closer to the object. This is going to give us a better scan. And with that done, we can start our scan. Now, this is actually going to look fairly okay when we go with this, because, well, this is really good software. It's going to do its best, and it can actually sort of recognize some of these features, even as small as they are. So we're going to get this looking okay. The issue is that these features are very small, and when you start getting these smoother surfaces, for example what we're coming to now, where the main bulk of this is relatively smooth, it's going to have a difficult time working out exactly how much rotation has occurred. And you can start to see that here, where everything is not perfectly aligning, and then it starts to realise that it's got a problem. So for the sake of completeness, we will have a look at what a mess this is. So we'll just click complete, and then we can see what problems we've got, and we can tell that everything's not aligned. Click our fusion and give it a chance to work through and try to put all of these points together, and we're going to get a pretty big mess. So it really hasn't been able to work out what's going on. We're trying to scan an object that is just too small, or at least too small combined with very few features, for the software to be able to recognize where it is at each stage. Now there's a number of things we can do as part of our technique to try and solve this, but I also want to show you what I think is probably the most important thing, and that is that you need to give the scanner something recognizable to track. Now in theory you could do this with the marker mode and use some of these dots, but that means you've got to angle the scanner down towards that, which is probably not the angle that you want to scan at most of the time. I know it isn't for me, I don't find it particularly helpful. So we want to find another solution. So there's several things that I found are kind of the secret to this, but the main one is we want some non-uniform features so the program doesn't get confused with what it's looking at. So we're going to create this on Blender. Now if you've never used Blender before, I'm going to do everything very, very slowly in a way that you can follow. But this is Blender. Now mine has got a nice reddish colour, it makes things easier to see. I'm not going to go through all of that. There's a video here on how to set up my settings and you can get this nice red colour, but you don't necessarily need it. It makes it easier to see, but you might want to check that out first. But what we're going to do here is use Blender to create like a plinth to put our object on that's going to be really feature rich to allow the scanner to basically lock onto those features and recognise the rotation that's happening as it's scanning. So what I'm going to do is select the cube that always starts in the middle. You'll have something like a camera showing as well. You can delete those as well. So I'm just going to grab and select that X and then delete that, and then Shift and A. We'll go to mesh and I'm going to bring in a cylinder. Now that will come in here. It tells us how many verts we've got, our radius and things like that. Now what we want to do is set this radius up so it's wide enough that our 3D scanner is going to see it easily, but also not detract from the thing that's being scanned. Now I find 50mm, so about 5 centimeters, a good size for this. It's big enough, so we're going to put in 25 because this is the radius. And then for the depth, again, we want something where the camera's going to see this easily, and this side detailing is going to be one of the most important bits. So we want a decent amount of depth. So I'm going to go for 50 there as well. Now we can also change the vertices around the outside, so we can go really low with this if we want to, but actually somewhere in the region of 32, which it should come in on, is probably about right for this. And then we need to set up the most important bits. So the first is that this is a decent enough size that the scanner's going to pick it up. 50mm should be fine. But now we want a load of non-uniform details, basically features on these outer edges, which is going to allow the software to track where the object that we're scanning is, because they're not identical. So what we're going to do is go into edit mode. Now to do this, when I hit tab, I've got machine tools, so it's going to have this feature which shows where everything is. When you hit tab, it's just going to change, and you'll notice up here you've got the version of vertex mode, edge mode, and then face mode, and you can change through those by hitting 1 to go into vertex mode, 2 for edge mode, or 3 for face mode, or you can just come up here and click it and we're going to go into edge mode. Then I'm going to go to this main edge, I'm going to press Ctrl and R to add in an edge loop, and I'm going to scroll up to get more and more edge loops. And we want these edge loops to be approximately square on each of these surfaces, so that looks like a square. Once we're done, we're going to click. That allows us to move this up and down. We don't really want to do that, so we're just going to right click, and now everything's in place. And we need to randomly select some of these faces to deal with. Now what we don't want to do is select any of the ones, I'm just going to come up here to face mode, along this top edge. That's going to be annoying, and it's going to interact with this top surface there, which we don't want. So I'm going to come perfectly into side view by using my gimbal over here. We can move between the different side views. I'm going to press Shift and Z to go into X-ray mode, and I'm going to select all the faces, making sure I don't get that top one or the bottom one, so we don't have any bad interactions. Shift and Z, and you can see we've got that there, everything selected. If I hadn't got this in X-ray mode, it will only select the bits that you can see, so it won't select the back face. So Shift and Z, select everything, and then we're good to go. Now what we want is to have some of these randomly selected. Now you have this select option here, and we can do something called checker deselect, but this is uniform. Everything is the same, so whether the scanner's looking here or here, it doesn't know because those features are identical. We do not want to do that. I'm going to Control and Z, so I'm selecting everything. We're going to go to select and select random. Now this is going to try and select loads of random bits from the whole object, so we're going to turn that off and go to deselect. And now what that's done is from the ones that were selected, deselected a load of random options. And now this will not have any uniform places to it. Now I try to avoid any big areas of blank space which can randomly happen. For example, that's quite a big, or this is quite a big area of blank space. Maybe let's select one there. And this is quite uniform on that line, though there's plenty around it. But I'm just going to select there, and we'll do one there, and probably one there. So anything that's a big blank of space that looks too similar to everything else, I'm going to select maybe 1 or 2 bits, just to make sure that we've got no problem. This probably isn't going to be an issue, but I like to err on the side of caution, and similarly anything that's got too much selected, I'm going to deselect some of them. Now we could have done this with the options that were in that bottom corner. Oh, actually let me just go back, I suddenly realized I didn't say something if you're new to Blender. So let's do that again. So select random. If you can't see this option, it's really small, you just click and it brings it up. And again, you can change this ratio to make it higher or lower, but generally about 0.3 is probably going to be about right. You can also change the C to sort of randomize this differently. But anyway, we're going to go through this process again. Let's actually up that so we've got more deselected. Let's go 0.5, there we go. And again, here would be a problem, so let's do something like that. And let's just add some more in. And if we've got any large areas where lots are selected, I'm just going to click to deselect them. So you hold down Shift as you're clicking on something to add to it. I should have said that as well. So Shift select to add to it, and then Shift on anything where there's a lot of them, and that will deselect it as well. So this is looking pretty good. Not too uniform, got a nice mix of different bits. So now we need to make this into a feature that's actually usable. And this is where we're going to start using some more shortcuts. So what I'm going to do is press I to inset them. Now this is going to select everything that's connected and bring them in. Now what we can do is hit I again, and that's going to insert everything individually. I don't think we need that. This should be perfectly fine as it is. Now at this point, we need to have these actually indented into the object. At the moment we've selected them, but they aren't anything different. We wouldn't be able to see this with the 3D scanner. There's just nothing there. So what we're going to do is press Alt and E, and then we're going to extrude faces along normals. And that's going to basically mean that they go either into or out of the center of our object. And we want to put this in a little bit, but not too far. But you can see this is looking pretty good, and we've got some recognizable shapes. Now I've got a slight issue that if we 3D print this, these faces here are going to be, well, flat to the build plate. So what we're going to do is G and Z to bring those down so that now there's a slight angle, which means we can print this flat on the build plate and it's not going to cause any issues because we've not got any surfaces that are parallel to the build plate. Now at this point in theory, from the angle that I was doing my 3D scan earlier, this will work perfectly well. But there is one thing we want to do as well, which is make sure that we've also got some features, not just on the side, but we actually want some features on the top as well, just so that if we're scanning from that direction, this actually works. So tab into edit mode, I'm going to go into face mode, again, that's just up there, or hit 3, and select that top face. Now what we're going to do is once again insert this, so we'll hit I and insert this all the way, mostly to the center, but I'm going to leave a bit of a gap. So something about there's probably going to be fine. And then we can use these edges once again to do the same trick. I'm going to hit Control and R, scroll up on the middle wheel of my mouse, and once again try and get these relatively proportional, so sort of square on the outside. Then we need to double check we're in face mode, so 3 again if you need it, and then we're going to select a load of these faces, once again leaving this outer edge because that's where the already extruded bits are, so we don't want to deal with those. Now, there's a number of ways we can select all of this, but the easiest way generally is to hit C, which gives a circle select. Then I can scroll up and down to change the size of that select, and then just click, and it will select everything inside that area. Escape to get out of that, and then we're pretty much good to go. We're going to follow the same process again. So up the top to select, come down to select random, and you've got the same settings as last time, so we don't need to change that. And one thing I am going to do is deselect the middle bit. We probably don't want that. So I'll use circle select again, and then I'm going to hit the middle mouse button in circle select, and that deselects it. I don't know why they use the middle mouse button, but they do. And then we'll deselect some of the bits again, just as we did last time, to try and make sure that these aren't too similar. So for example here, this looks quite similar to one of the other areas. So just here is basically the same as up there, which probably should be recognized, but let's not give it the chance to have a problem. So we'll just deselect one of them. Once we're happy with everything that's been selected, once again, we're going to I to insert everything, and then we just need to E to extrude them down. You don't need to use Alt and E because we're extruding everything in the same direction, so E works fine. Now, just to explain one of the ideas of what we've done here, the insetting was very important for this process. If we don't inset, just like we're showing here, we're going to have an issue, and there's two issues here. Firstly, if we just extrude these without insetting them, firstly it causes some problems on the top where we've got this intersection, but the bigger one is this edge here. Now the reason this is an issue is because Blender is trying to realize that there's one point that is making up the inside of each of these sort of areas. It's one point that's controlling or making manifold two different bits. It's really difficult to explain. Basically, it doesn't like it, so we really don't want to do that. That's why the insetting is very, very important. So do make sure that that insetting is done, and that's why we did it. Next, as an optional part of the process, we're going to hollow this out a little bit more. So I'm going to go into edit mode again, so just tab into edit mode, and we're going in face mode, so up there or 3, and we're going to once again I to inset this. I'm going to X-ray mode so I can check that I'm going to do this far enough that we're not going to get in the way of anything else that we've extruded inwards. Shift and Z to come out of X-ray mode, and that's probably okay. Let's go back into X-ray mode, and we're just going to E to extrude this up most of the way. So what we've done is created this big hollow part, but I've made sure the outer walls are thick enough that we're not going to have a problem with our 3D printing. Up to the top, we're going to do a similar process with this central bit that we deselected earlier. I'm going to just scale that up a little bit with S, and then we're just going to E to extrude that down. Now, what we're going to want to do here is make sure that we can connect these two bits together. And this is relatively easy. Select that face, shift select that face, and then we just need to hit Control and E, and we're going to select Bridge Edge Loops, and it joins everything together, which is really nice. It's very, very easy to do. Now what's cool about this is it's created this slightly cone shape, so this is going to print absolutely fine, and again we don't need any supports with this. Finally, to create even more variation, I'm going to go into edge mode, so that's 2, and just randomly select some of these edges. I'll do this manually just without using any of the deselect functions that we tried earlier. This is just a slight added bit. I'm not sure it's really necessary, but I like to again play on the safe side. Control and B, and just drag our mouse to the side, and that's going to leave a bit of a bevel, and we're good to go. So once you're happy with this and everything's looking random, we need to export this as an STL, so just go to File, Export, and then STL, and then you can find wherever you want to save it to, give it whatever name you choose, and then click Export. And it's that easy. We've just created our printing tower that's going to act as a plinth and allow us to get a much more detailed 3D scan, because our scanner is going to track the object vastly better. Now if you don't want to do this yourself, I'll put this file up on the Patreon and on Cults 3D, so if you want to grab it there, you're more than welcome to, and as always, any support there is really appreciated. So this is our end product. You can see it's all really randomized around the outside, a really easy print, and we're just going to do exactly the same things we did last time, but with the addition of this plinth. So just a bit of blue tack in the center. I leave that hole so I can put other supports like bulldog clips if I want to use them to clip onto a part, and we're just going to 3D scan this in exactly the same way. The only other real change that I'd recommend making is if you've got control over the speed of the turntable, is just slow that down a little bit. Not the slowest it can go, but generally a sort of medium-ish pace. So we're going to do the scan twice more. Firstly, I just want to show you this is auto. It doesn't work very well, so we're going to up this to again 4 on the exposure, and really we've got no difference. Everything's about the same in terms of the distance. It says it's somewhere between good and excellent. The only difference here is the fact that we've got this base, this plinth, with these recognizable features. We are going to do one more scan after this, where I'm going to tweak some settings and talk you through what I'm doing and how this gives a better scan. But I did want to show you just one scan where the only change is this plinth and what a difference it makes, because after this, all of the other changes do give some slight incremental improvements, but nothing that's totally mind-blowing. It just improves a little bit more on the result we're going to get here. Now I have sped this up, but I wanted to show everything so you knew that I wasn't cheating you or doing something that doesn't really work, and then we're just going to fusion this together exactly the same way as we did before, and we'll have a quick look at this result. I'm not going to go any further with the processing or deal with things like little holes, because we'd do that with a further scan. So here's the results, and as you can see, we've got no issues with tracking. We've got great detail. Obviously we've got the slight holes where we need to be at a different angle to do a second scan. There's a video in the description that I'll put up if you want to see how you can do multiple scans and join them together. And then for this base bit, we'd just probably remove that really quickly. But I think this is a really notable improvement. I'm not sure there's much more we can do to improve upon this, but there are some slight minor tweaks that will give just the tiniest bit of improvement in results. So let's talk about those. So the first thing I'm going to do, which flies against a lot of advice I've previously received, is I'm going to turn off my desk lamp. Now you see the auto function on my camera has just hit in, but basically this means I've just got my normal light in my room on. That is it. And because of that, we're going to have to up our exposure probably to somewhere about 5. Maybe 6 if I need it. Now you can see some couple of areas of red showing a little bit of overexposure there. Let's go back down to 5. But what I'm going to do is turn on my colour scanning. Now all this is really doing is turning on the LEDs that are on the Mini 2, but it does give a very uniform lighting for the direction the scanner is scanning from, and allows it to get into those little nooks and crannies just that little bit better. Once again, I'm going to show the whole scan and the processing just very sped up so you can see I'm not doing anything to cheat you. This is just the simple addition of a plinth and some really quick and easy settings. And if anything, this shows that you need less to be able to give a really good 3D scan. You don't need or even want a complex lighting setup or any lighting other than your normal room light. Just rely on the lights that come with the scanner. And here's the results. Let's turn off the colour so we've got a comparable result to what we've done earlier. And you can see, I do think this is better. You get slightly crisper corners and edges, and you get nice smooth surfaces where this should be smooth. Now, bearing in mind that the height of this is about 27mm in total from top to bottom, I really don't think you can ask for much more detail than that out of a 3D scanner. Now, if you are interested in this and you don't have a 3D scanner and you're just using this to test out or see what you can do, there is a link in the description to the Mini 2, as well as the other 3D scanners that I've used, but you might want to check out the specific review videos for those. I'll also put any discount codes that are currently valid that I've got in the description if there are any at any point in time. Now, those are affiliate links, so this does help support the channel as well at no additional cost to you. So if this is something that does interest you, then obviously using those links is again hugely appreciated. Hopefully this has been interesting and giving you an idea of what you can do. Once again, that file for this plinth is available online if you're interested in it. Now, I have made the assumption that most people that own a 3D scanner probably have a 3D printer, but if this is something where you'd like a physical version of this, just drop me a message either below in the comment section, on YouTube or Instagram, and I'm sure I can help sort you out. Have a great day, guys.